The West is a manure kingdom. Here's why. I live on a little chunk of disputed territory in South China. Hong Kong is the sad story of how democracy was almost achieved, seemingly forever overshadowed by the inherent likelihood of Chinese repatriation. The political issues here far surpass those of any Western city or territory, and yet you wouldn't know it. Hong Kong is among the safest cities on earth despite also being the most densely populated. Hong Kong creates more millionaires per capita than any other territory in the world, homelessness and poverty are incredibly rare, drug use is almost non-existent, and it has been voted the freest economy in the world. I disagree with the last assertion, given fresh food imports are monopolized by Maxims and the taxi industry is an overregulated joke industry. But my point is that despite a very real threat of a Chinese takeover, and despite demographic replacement in the form of millions of immigrant mainland Chinese, Hong Kong still manages to be a safe, clean, respectful and pleasant city awash with opportunities. I think living here has added a sense of perspective to my politics. 1. It's furthered my understanding of what constitutes a genuine political threat. Trump is a little kitten compared to Jinping. The West faces no political issues that aren't of its own making. Secondly, though, it's made me see just how ridiculous our collective conduct is. In New York, government representatives cheer at the idea of chasing away a huge investment from Amazon, while in Hong Kong locals scratch their heads and say something about how dumb foreigners are. The West is flushing itself down 3 toilets simultaneously. First, the demographic toilet. Europe in particular is a fiend for this kind of thing. Native Europeans have a birth rate that is lower than replacement level. What this means is, once all the dying are dead, the population will be smaller than before. This is the enemy of economic growth. More people generally means more money. So, Juncker and his mates came up with a great idea. Mass immigration. Not just any kind of mass immigration though, mass immigration of poor, uneducated refugees from the Middle East and Africa. This solves the population problem, but it takes an astounding amount of ignorance to not realize that the natives might get a little irritated by this. It's not a racial problem. I promise it's not, it's a cultural one. Like it or not, there is a massive gaping hole between Western European culture and Middle Eastern culture. For example, in the West, being stoned in public is a hobby and not a punishment. These cultural differences result in tensions which, because of the differing skin tones of the respective parties, are only assumed to be racial. This is even more so the case in the US, where any incident including anyone darker than an Asian is assumed to be racially motivated. The sad truth is that since mass immigration began, crime rates have soared, industrial production has dropped like a stone, GDP is shaky and anti-immigration parties are winning all over Europe. Then there's the economic toilet. This is of course partially fueled by all those unemployable Middle Easterners leeching from the state, but that's by no means the root of the issue. The economic situation has been butchered by utopian economists who think they can get around their stupidity with obscurantism. Socialism does not fucking work. Anyone with any interest in macroeconomics knows this. Even the Chinese, who purport to be communists, have fully embraced their own form of free marketism. Granted, they play around with the exchange rate to keep prices favorable, but honestly, every floating currency on earth is manipulated by central banks to some degree, so who can blame them? The West has gone full socialist, especially Europe, with taxation soaring to the point France is currently in the midst of a 3-month riot. Welfare spending spirals out of control and police forces spend their time arresting people for tweets and ignoring gang rape because accusing Muslims of something might seem racist. They don't have funding for real policing anyway. European production numbers are abysmal and the economy is genuinely looking scary now. France has ground to a halt because, well, a police van ablaze outside Louis Vuitton is hardly encouraging to shoppers. Lastly, we come to the final toilet. The denial toilet. Europe is so cucked at this point that it's willing to blame the last people left to hold the burden of their failing state, for the failure of said state. As things worsen, the very people who fucked it up absolve themselves of all blame, claiming anyone questioning the status quo is a racist hell-traitor. Merely mentioning immigration is now a sin, statistics regarding immigrants' economic and criminal contributions condemned to the ever-growing pile of offensive material. Any attempt to rectify the circling of the bowl will be met with vitriol, essentially condemning us to walk willingly to our own demise just so we don't seem something ist. While France demolishes itself in frustration at the absolute state of itself, its leader enacts policy requiring schools to refer to parents with gender-neutral labels. Mother and father are now parent 1 and parent 2. Yes, Emmanuel, I'm sure that's the problem all those rioters wanted you to fix. It's not that they can't feed themselves and dare not leave the house for fear of being beheaded, it's a lack of gender neutrality. You fucking nonce. Even the man who flushed the toilet, George Soros, has now admitted we're traveling through the U-bend. I'm mildly curious what happens next.